Ek is in 1940 gebore en ek het Durban groot geword en later my graad deeltyds gekry en onderwys geswat en gevolg tot adjunkt en so 'n bietjie as hoof van senior school, hoërskool. Die tyd wat ek op skool was as onderwyser, het die tegnologie net begin. En ek moet sê dat daardie tyd af was die leerlinge het hulle meer geweet as die onderwysers. En nogtans was ek geselekteer om tot so laerskool 'n groepie te begin en van die kinders bewus te maak van die nuwe tegnologie wat daar op die mark is.
My name is Rensha and I was born in 1972. My interaction with technology is basic. I can use a smartphone and a laptop and do the necessary electronic banking and purchases. What excites me about the technology is that there's always this prospect of doing my work and creative communication quicker, better, if I make the time to learn and are open for learning. However, I'm scared to make mistakes, and this definitely holds me back to grow and develop more skills. And at the end of the day, I feel a bit useless. Sometimes also feel that people or younger generations get frustrated when they try and show you or teach you more and more skills and functionality of technology as it develops, and that is quite frustrating sometimes as well.
I'm Zoe, and I was born in 2001. I grew up in the Cape Town area, and I've lived here my whole life. I am now an accounting student at Stellenbosch University, who loves spending time with her family, playing golf, and watching series. I remember growing up through the phases of technology quite vividly. When I started school in 2008, I used the library books as encyclopedia, which then later went to mobile dongles and Google, and later by high school Wi-Fi was easily accessible. I now use technology daily in my studies as lecture provides electronic aids, and I rarely use pen and paper to make notes in class. I use social media actively, and I enjoy learning about other people's cultures that I wouldn't necessarily have known had I not had access to technology. What excites me is the opportunity of globalization, that I can learn so much about so far places, and I just have an easy source in my hand. What scares me is the access to a lot of information through a quick Google search. I even found a photo of myself on an article which had nothing to do with me. And also the addiction to social media, because it is so easy to get trapped in a world where you can spend hours on these short videos.
Hi, my name is Daniel. I was born in the year 2012. I live in Gordons Bay and I go to Gordons Bay Primary. I like playing soccer. I use my cell phone to play games on and watch videos. I use a TV to watch series and movies. I think aircons and solar panels are important for the future because aircons can keep us cool during global warming, and solar panels can make a greener energy source for the aircons.
Okay. Hi, Kathleen. Chris from next door. You want me to do this survey for you? I'm 76 or 77 years old. I'm never sure which it is. Born November 45 in Cape Town and went to school in Cape Town and UCT, obviously in Cape Town. Short story of who I am. Who I am. Short story. Had a lot of fun going to the Navy for a year, did a diving course in the Navy, a lot of fun, met a lot of interesting people, enjoyed that experience a lot. I think that's true. I spent my work life in Johannesburg, not really in Cape Town. Left here in about 1971 and spent probably 30 or 40 years working in advertising and marketing. That really was my bent. And then ended up at the Nielsen Company measuring television audience ratings for South Africa. That was my job. I ran that business for Nielsen in South Africa. Well, I should actually say Audits of Great Britain, Nielsen. That was the name of the company, AGB Nielsen. Okay, that's a little bit about me. How do I interact with technology? As I mentioned to you earlier today, when Hewlett-Packard came out with their first programmable calculators, I loved that, and I got one straight away. Spent a lot of time doing some really amateur programming. Enjoyed that a lot. Spent quite a bit of time doing DOS, BASIC, a little bit of that. So I've always interacted well with technology. It's never been an issue for me. At all. I've used Excel, for decades now. Well, Lotus 123 before that, and then Excel for decades. And I think I'm a pretty useful user of Excel. I certainly know what I'm doing, and Word and PowerPoint, and to an extent Microsoft Access. So, and DBase before that, funnily enough. So I think I know what I'm doing. What excites and what scares me about technology? I think nothing scares me about technology. There's nothing to be frightened of. But bar, I suppose, IT people, because I've dealt with IT people for 30 or 40 years. And it's like talking to a brick. They have no understanding of people. They talk to machines day in and day out. So I think they should be corralled, and put behind bars, I think, and people should throw meat to them 2 or 3 times a day and just order them to do things for you. But you certainly can't let them rule the roost. It doesn't work like that. So other than IT people, nothing scares me about technology. What excites me, I suppose it's got to be, robots more than anything else. Artificial intelligence, I think, is just a misnomer for good programming, good software and good firmware. But robotics, I think, takes the drudgery, like production lines, takes the drudgery out of work for many, many people. It takes manual labor away from people completely. So I think that's the exciting part of it, to free the average person in the street, to free them more and more their time as we go forward. I think that's the real challenge, and I think the real advantage to IT, robotics, AI, all of that stuff. I think that's about it. That's really my views on that. If you'd like to talk more.
My name is Martin
Jeff.
Nessie.
I am born in
I
51.
was born in 1965 in Kitwe,
and
Zambia,
I'm married
as a
for
Dutch
51
immigrant.
years.
From Zambia, we
I've
moved to
got
Cape
3
Town, where I was in
children
school
and
till
6
matric. I
grandchildren.
studied medical technology for 4
I would
years
say
and
technology
worked at
gives us a
Tygerberg
lot of
Hospital for 9
benefits
years.
and advantages,
After that,
but
we
also
started sheep
replaced
farming
some
in the
valuable
Karoo, where we
things.
have been ever
Reading a
since.
newspaper on
My
computer
interaction with
is
technology
not to
is
be
the use
compared to
thereof
hold a
to
magazine or
improve our
newspaper in your
farm
hand,
industry and our
referring to
lives.
articles
What
or to
excites
do
me is that
cutouts.
technology does not stand still
Technology
and
also
generally
takes away the
improves our
real life
lifestyle, depending
communicating.
on which way
How
it is
many kids
applied.
do we see nowadays
What
playing
scares
in the
me is the
park or in the
damage that it may
yard,
cause due to
writing
less
letters
social
or printing
interaction amongst
pictures?
people,
They
due to
all
social
are
media
in
and games.
computers now
Thank you.
or hanging on a cell phone. And what scares me is that I love my job, I have a job, and what if that has been taken away by technology? Things were really different in the old days.
My name is Peter Jack Volkveen. I was born in 1999 and grew up in the Western Cape. My earliest memory of interacting with technology was when I received my first Motorola cell phone when I turned 6. My time at university has played an integral role in my understanding of technology, but more importantly, how integration of technology into everything we do has come to shape our lives. If there was any doubt of technology's importance and its powerful impact on our lives, lockdown served to remind us about two things. Technology is an inseparable part of our 21st century lives, but it can't replace our most basic desire for physical interaction. Today, I'm working for a company that uses smart coding to provide really amazing tax services to its clients. Some of the tools we use include RStudio, SQL, Power BI, and Microsoft Dynamics. Technology has opened up endless possibilities, from medicine, education, and entertainment to agriculture and food provision. In every aspect of our lives, we can use technology to save more lives, dramatically expand access to education, and ensure sustainable food production for the future. Despite the truly amazing things tech can do for us, we'd be ignorant to overlook its potentially detrimental impact if used for the wrong reasons. My main fear is that of the misuse of technology for malicious purposes, and that we lose our humanity.
Good morning, Kathleen. I wanted to give you the voice note you were asking for. So I was born in 1980. I have a bachelor's degree from Stellenbosch University, studied in Afrikaans there, and then also later on did my UNISA degree through correspondence. I was in corporate for many years, and I'm now in the last year in entrepreneurship. I absolutely love technology. ChatGPT is I don't know what I'd do without it. Web design has become so much easier. Entrepreneurship has become so much easier. I'm very excited. I think it's a really great time to be alive. My only worry is that school and education is not keeping up the pace of technology, and I do worry about how to prepare my daughter for the future that is coming. Have a good day. Bye.
After making a video about millennials and another about Generation X, I've gotten a lot of comments asking why we divide people into generational groups at all. How is a boomer born in 1946 attributed the same generational characteristics as a boomer born in 1964? That's a fair question. Let's get into it. You're watching Future Now, videos about the future of tech and society. As in my previous video on this topic, I want to be clear that I'm speaking from an American perspective, because as you'll see, generational breakdowns are very much influenced by culture, and thus different regions of the world that have different lived experiences will not have the same names for social generations. There are names for generations going back further than the baby boomers, such as the greatest generation who fought in World War II and grew up during the Great Depression, and the silent generation, which followed. But all of the generations before the baby boomers were actually named retroactively, because boomers kicked off this whole naming of generations trend. Following World War II, there was a boom in the birth rate, as Americans felt confident that the newly strong economy would allow them to raise multiple children, and suddenly demographers, economists, and advertisers felt a need to label this group to better understand them. Why? Because such a big spike in babies would continue to have ripple effects across the economy, society, and culture of the country for years to come. Every major milestone this group reached had big implications. For example, when boomers started reaching car buying age, suddenly car sales would go up. When they were of age to attend college, enrollment would skyrocket. And of course, eventually boomers became the largest voting bloc and therefore dictated much of government policy. According to William Strauss and Neil Howe's generational theory, there's a new generation of people every 20 or so years that create a new social, political, and economic climate, and they're tied together by three key markers. One, the relative age during a major moment in history and the social trends during that time. 2, the beliefs and behaviors they share by virtue of being raised around the same time. And 3, their buy-in to being a part of their generation by being aware of commonalities shared with people in their group. It's much easier to study and follow trends in a group of people if you're able to label them, especially if you're an ad agency, which arguably are the main force behind the naming of generations. In fact, you can find several tips online for generational marketing. The main reason for this is that it works. As much as many people don't want to believe that ads targeted at them because of their age are effective, more often than not, they are, and were particularly useful before the rise of big data, in which companies can now micro-target individuals through Facebook, Instagram, and, well, YouTube. By focusing on an age group, market researchers can do cohort analyses, meaning following a group and their change in behavior and opinions through their life cycle. That way, researchers can differentiate what a particular generation thought and how they behaved in their youth versus how they think and behave in adulthood, and can also compare this to other generations at those stages. So basically, we have to deal with the constant barrage of noise about baby boomers, millennials, and Gen Zers so that companies can produce better targeted Instagram ads for their terrible smartphone games. But Strauss and Howe's generational theory goes even further than that. They claim that generations follow a cycle of 4 distinct eras. The high, in which institutions are strong and individualism is weak, and so society generally agrees on the direction they're heading in. This is followed by the awakening, wherein people wake up and realize that actually institutions are kind of terrible, and they want to take back their independence. Then comes the unraveling, when institutions are heavily weakened and individualism is soaring as people enjoy their newfound autonomy, which ultimately leads to the crisis, which is a time of war and revolution leading to creation of new institutions built on the values of the generation currently in power. If the baby boomers were at the high in the so-called golden age of capitalism, Generation X rebelled during their awakening. Millennials fully embraced their individualism and grew up in the midst of growing culture war during the unraveling. Then we are now in the crisis era. As public sentiment is more divided than it has been in a long time, confidence in institutions like the White House and Congress are at an all-time low, and we're beginning to seriously contend with the consequences of climate change. I suppose by this theory, though, we're due for a new high and a reboot for the cycle in the next decade, presuming we can make it through the crisis and get back on track. Despite the sort
Innovation is such a fascinating topic, but how does it actually get adopted? Believe it or not, but in order to answer this question, we look back at a theory that was developed more than 50 years ago, and it's called the diffusion of innovation theory. Everett Rogers, the author of this theory, proposed 5 stakeholder groups that explain how innovation gets adopted over time and by different cohorts. The first group he called the innovators. These are the 2.5% who are out there literally sleeping in front of the shop to buy the innovation the day it comes out without being road tested. The second cohort is made up of early adopters, roughly 13.5%. The early adopters are the immediate second wave. The first buzz is over, the product is maturing in its abilities, and the early adopters get pleasure and satisfaction out of early usage. The early majority represent the third group, that is the next 34%. The product becomes widely known and mainstream, and the early majority group are those guys who ride this mainstream adoption. The fourth group, or the so-called late majority, is far more cautious. They represent roughly 34% and will wait, typically for decline in pricing, until first hiccups are ironed out, and only then will adopt the innovation. At the very tail end, the fifth and final group consists of so-called laggards. Laggards are the most resistant, but finally they will get over the line and make up roughly 16%. Think about laggards as those guys who only now sign up for e-banking or maybe the internet. If you map these 5 cohorts of the diffusion of innovation theory over time, and according to these percentages, it will form a bell curve. If you now sum up this information across the bell curve, you reach the well-known S-curve. The S-curve, in 4 stages, describes how innovation is adopted in terms of the speed of adoption. At the very first stage, where there's very low growth, we see almost every startup entrepreneur on this planet. A lot of trial and error, a lot of prototyping, and many of these innovations will never see the light. If an innovation takes off, it ideally takes off in an exponential fashion. Exponential growth is what we see right now in many solutions, for example, Uber and Airbnb. Rapid growth rates, and typically then we call them disruptive innovations. Once exponential growth is over, we enter the stage of slowing growth. And after that, we see a plateauing. Examples for plateauing over the last 5 years were analog photography or DVD players. So you can see how the diffusion of innovation theory, the 5 cohorts, can be mapped to the S-curve and allows us to understand who, in what sequence, and at what speed adopts innovation.
Something called the law of diffusion of innovation. And if you don't know the law, you definitely know the term. The first 2.5% of our population are our innovators. The next 13.5% of our population are our early adopters. The next 34% are your early majority, your late majority, and your laggards. The only reason these people buy touch-tone phones is because you can't buy rotary phones anymore. We all sit at various places at various times on the scale. What the law of diffusion of innovation tells us is that if you want mass market success or mass market acceptance of an idea, you cannot have it until you achieve this tipping point between 15 and 18% market penetration, and then the system tips. And I love asking businesses, what's your conversion on new business? And they love to tell you, oh, it's about 10%, proudly. Well, you can trip over 10% of the customers. We all have about 10% who just get it. That's how we describe them, right? That's like that gut feeling, oh, they just get it. The problem is, how do you find the ones that just get it before you're doing business with them versus the ones who don't get it? So it's this here, this little gap, that you have to close, as Jeffrey Moore calls it, crossing the chasm. Because you see, the early majority will not try something until someone else has tried it first. And these guys, the innovators and the early adopters, they're comfortable making those gut decisions. They're more comfortable making those intuitive decisions that are driven by what they believe about the world, and not just what product is available. These are the people who stood online for 6 hours to buy an iPhone when they first came out, when you could have just walked into the store the next week and bought one off the shelf. These are the people who spent $40,000 on flat screen TVs when they first came out, even though the technology was substandard. And by the way, they didn't do it because the technology was so great. They did it for themselves. It's because they wanted to be first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe.
Hi, I'm Ferdy Serum, and today I'd like to discuss with you the Concerns-Based Adoption Model, otherwise known as CBAM. Years of research into what happens during the change process. It describes, explains, and predicts what probable teacher concerns are going to be and their behaviors throughout the change process. If we can know this, we can anticipate and address some of these things and have a much more successful implementation. So CBAM really looks at 3 different components. The first of these is the stages of concern, how we feel and perceive things in new programs and change. The next is the levels of use, and these are the actions and behaviors that we're going to see across the stages as an implementation or innovation rolls out. And finally, there are the innovation configurations, the different ways that these implementations can happen from most to least desirable. As we're exploring communication and collaboration, there are going to be many new practices that we introduce. And it can be frustrating to people who've been working in ed tech for a while, how it seems that no matter what types of powerful tools we introduce, things don't change. CBAM removes that mystery and helps guide us to more effective levels. It really has to do with moving from me to it to us. At the very beginning levels, awareness, a statement of concern might be, I'm not even concerned about it. Many of us talk to teachers who are just now hearing about Common Core for the first time, for example. At the informational level, there are people who want to know more about it. Everybody in this course has already decided that they wanted to know more about certain aspects of digital learning. And this is the key one. How is using this going to affect me? All of these have the me question in them. And if we don't address these, we will be sunk by the people whose concerns have not been met. But once we move beyond this stage, we begin to see where our focus is shifting. People might say, hey, I'm spending all of my time getting materials ready for the new LMS or for Google Docs or whatever tool we're using. And then we begin to wonder, how's this affecting my learners? Is there any way I can do it better? The key here is we're talking about the it now and not about me. We've moved into what the intervention is going to possibly do to help our students. Soon after that, we realize many other people are working on the same thing we are. Wouldn't it be more powerful if we could collaborate and work together? And after doing that for a while, we may even have ideas about how to make this entire innovation better than the way it was originally introduced. Now we're focusing on us.
Hey everybody, Will here from EduCenter, and today I'd like to share with you the technology acceptance model. It is a mouthful. Anyways, the technology acceptance model really looks like this. You first have your external variables. This could be a person's predisposition to a certain type of technology, like a computer or an iPad. They could be coming in with other things like if they've used something similar to it, that's an external variable. But those are going to create two sets of things that a user is looking at. First off, perceived usefulness, and then perceived ease of use. Perceived usefulness meaning, do they think it's useful to their everyday life? And the perceived ease of use is how much training is going to be needed. Can I pick this up and go? Or am I going to have to be reading technical manuals before I can even get started? From there, we see that the perceived ease of use will actually influence the perceived usefulness. So if something's really, really hard to use, that's going to influence a person's understanding of how useful something is. Most people, cognitively speaking, are very lazy. They want to be able to pick up a new piece of technology and they want to use it right away without really having to open up a how-to guide. So going from there, those two things will create a specific attitude toward using the piece of technology. Now, that attitude could be a positive attitude or a negative attitude. And that's what leads us to this behavioral intention to use, or behavioral intention, I should say. The behavioral intention is a positive use. If they think that it's going to be useful and easy to use, then of course they're going to actually use it. If there's a negative intention, then they're not going to use it, or more likely will not use it, is a better way to say it. Next,
Hi, I'm Ferdy Serum, and today I'd like to discuss with you
everybody, Will here.
The concerns-based adoption model.
Technology is all around us. Routinely impacting our daily lives, technology has a significant impact on how we live, work, and play. But a common definition of technology is elusive to many of us. That's why it's important to provide a bit of definition to the term technology. Let's take a look. Technology, as indicated by this model, is a system of practical knowledge and problem solving to create tools. That means that technology is not necessarily reflected in things or hardware. Technology includes things like human language and efficiency, both of which are really just ideas and don't have associated hardware or tools. So technology are the ideas or concepts behind the tools we often associate with technology. The line isn't always perfectly solid, but it exists. In today's world, we tend to equate the word technology with the word gadget. In other words, any device or tool that's new or interesting gets labeled as technology. But really, that's probably not the best way to think about it.
Digital transformation was critical for us. I mean, if you look at now, we're a big R&D. Digital transformation was critical for us. I mean, if you look at now, we're a big Digital transformation was critical for us. I mean, if you look at Dow, we're a big R&D engine. We focus on helping the world solve problems. In 2019, we finished a major merger and split out with DuPont. Our CEO came forward and said, we want to be very much focused on being a customer-centric, innovative, inclusive, and sustainable company. And just knowing that we had that ambition to go forward made us step back and really think about what do we need to do differently? How do we need to interact with our customers differently? How do we need to operate differently? So the previous perception of being digitally driven was that IT would lead all of the change and that the technology would be the driver for the changes that we needed to make in the company. I think the eureka moment at Dow was understanding that this wasn't about technology. The digital transformation is really about how people do their work differently and understanding that the IT department wasn't going to drive this on our own. And through our transformation, it became very clear that this is a team sport and we needed our businesses, our functions, everyone in the company engaged to drive the change that's needed. We learned a ton about what our customers really cared about and what they wanted versus what we thought they wanted. So to adapt.
Mom, can you make me dinner? Mom! Oh. Hi. Yeah. Yeah, I was over there. You must have forgotten about me. This is probably gonna suck anyway, so. Honey, how do you get this thing on? Hi, honey. No, the reason I'm on my phone is because I'm sharing this charity event that I put together with my friends. I'm also looking up new jobs, so hopefully they have online job applications. Yeah, and the reason I'm at home is because we have student loan debts higher than any other generation before us. We're just trying to save a little money before we can actually live out on our own. Makes sense, right? Right? This is probably gonna suck anyway, so. No, the reason that I say it's gonna suck is because I care. I care more than you guys. I wanna make this the best that it can be. I really do. If we're gonna put our time into something, we're gonna make it amazing, and I'm dedicated to that. Yep, let me just send it to you quick. All right, it's off. I love this thing. Oh, Karen keeps commenting on all my statuses. Delete. Oh, hi, honey. Yeah, let me get that to you. I got it here on my tablet.
are 3 things that foresight practitioners can do to enhance efficacy of policy making. So first thing is really the foresight practitioner needs to be aware of their metaphor or their narrative. Some assume they're outside the policy framework, but we're actually part of the policy framework. The second one is to really understand where the resistance or the pain is in the policy framework. Are they in trauma? Are they fear-based? Do they believe nothing happens here? So it's truly understanding their context. Once I understand their context, I can think, what's the right method? Is it CLA and metaphor transformation? Is it scenarios? Is it visioning? Is it futures wheel? So I need to understand myself, and I need to understand their particular context. Then I can come up with the right method. Third is really action learning. People often think the goal after foresight is a plan, a things to do list, a checklist. For me, it's really, where is the energy? So you create futures, you create scenarios, and you find out where's the energy, what do you want to do next?